President Trump has chosen his new ATF director, and some gun owners are saying that he is the best choice for the ATF that we've ever seen. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is Robert Cekada. We want to see who this guy isn't, but more importantly, who he is. Now, I'm going to give you the facts as I see them because he has a history at the ATF, and you'll see a little bit of back and forth here. And I'm not here to paint out no kind of hero or villain with the guy. I'm here to tell you the facts as I see them. So, are we looking at a true pro-Second Amendment ATF director, which in a lot of ways is kind of a oxymoron, or just another chameleon that has been able to survive every single administration? I'll let you know where I stand on it and give you my opinion, and I want to hear yours. What do you think about the new ATF director? Of course, he has not been confirmed or anything yet, but what do you think about Trump's choice here? Let me know down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So let's look at who Robert Cekada is. He is a former police officer from New York City. He moved down to Florida, where he was a part of SWAT, and then in 2005, he actually went to the Baltimore Field Division to join the ATF. Now, every place he's been, including the ATF, he's worked his way up the ranks. So from January 2022 to September of that same year, he moved up to Deputy Assistant Director for field offices in like 19 states, where he did oversee some regulatory process. And then in September of 2022 up to right now, he's the Executive Assistant Director for Operations. In April of this year, he became basically the #2 guy at the ATF. So we're not talking about some random drop-in, just some guy that they kind of pulled off the street and said, hey, here's a job. He has a long history at the ATF. This might be one of the things that should concern gun owners, though, when I tell you about some of the stuff that he's actually been involved in. But let's look at what he's been praised for first. So NSSF says they're encouraged by his nomination, that he is a guy that understands gun owners and is willing to work with them. The American Suppressor Association, they say, hey, he's a guy that's willing to bring gun owners to the table, not look at them as criminals, but actually bring them in on the conversation, because, yeah, the ATF, of course, is amongst one of those agencies that has been the most oppressive to gun owners for a really long time. He actually helped reverse a Biden-era rule on certain importations of like what they call dual-use barrels, which essentially, makes it where you can take a barrel, no matter what kind of gun it was on, and as long as it has some kind of sporting feature, you can then put that barrel on a sporting or non-sporting type of rifle. They say as long as you follow the NFA and 922R compliant. So he helped reverse that. There was also ammo that essentially was a nightmare getting imported, and he helped reverse that as well. Also, according to reports, he was instrumental in repealing the zero tolerance policy that we know caused the closure of more gun shops in the United States under Biden than any other policy before it. There was also a memo from the ATF talking about NICS alerts and how those rules on alerts for firearms could only be used in federal firearm investigations, with tighter time windows in which they could investigate or do those follow-ups on these NICS alerts, but also making the approval process actually a lot more stringent as well. So they couldn't just use these NICS alerts as a way to track law-abiding gun owners. That all sounds good, right? Here's the problem, though. That's only half the story, because some of these rules he was actually in place at the ATF under Biden enforcing these rules. Under Biden, there was a lot of things that hit gun owners hard, but 3 of the most crucial: frame and receivers, pistol braces, and the zero tolerance policy. And of course, the ghost gun rule essentially is trying to basically track every single gun in the United States, which totally goes against the Second Amendment. So it's not like Cekada wrote off on this thing or even endorsed it, but he definitely was an instrumental tool in keeping that regulatory process in place. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. yeah, that was his job and so and so. Okay, but let's look deeper into this though. Pistol braces. This is one of the worst. And, one of the things that, gun owners eventually proved mass non-compliance, how strong that can actually be. And because of some good gun right groups, through injunctions and everything else, and eventually we got that repealed, okay? But it put a lot of pressure on millions of gun owners. Now, this was Dettelbach and Biden's little baby that they love so much. So it's not like Cekada wrote off on this one either, but you got to remember, at the time, he was the one that was overseeing the enforcement, the regulations, and the inspections on these pistol braces. And there is one confirmed case, even after these policies were vacated, where the ATF went after a gun owner over their CZ Scorpion with a brace up in DC. So at this point, it's like, is this guy for gun owners or is he not? I mean, there's no op-eds out there, where he's calling for any kind of gun control. There's no assault weapon ban talk that I could find anyways, or magazine bans or anything like this. So just having a job to do, though, is not necessarily the best defense when it comes to gun owners. We don't trust the ATF anyways. You could almost put anybody in that position and gun owners would be wary for good reason. But this guy Cekada, even though there's no explicit anti-gun messaging, on the surface it looks like more pro-gun messaging, he was still behind the scenes as a higher up in the ATF, still enforcing these policies, right? There was no talk of him, not that I could find again, but there was no talk of him saying, hey, I'm going to resign from this position because what y'all are pushing on gun owners, I absolutely don't agree with, right? He didn't leave his ranks. He stayed right there, making sure policies were followed. Policies that hurt a lot of gun owners, and Cekada was right there in the mix of it. Almost, dare I say, kind of like a Marvin Richardson with just less experience at the ATF, and it's kind of whichever way we're a-flowing, Marvin was a-going. That's kind of what I feel like here. Now, he's done some good things since Trump came into office, but again, the stuff previously is what I care about. And the most honest way you can look at this is to just kind of sit and wait. When that Senate confirmation comes up, you need to have some of those Republicans up there asking the hard questions. Would you support a pistol brace rule? Or how do you feel about pistol braces in general? Would you ever support a zero tolerance policy? Why were you behind some of these things and not choosing to resign from your position in opposition to this? You don't want to get people up there that are like, oh, I read an article from the NSSF that says this guy is good, and just glaze the guy the whole time. I'm talking about real questions to get to the bottom of who you actually are. We know he's not a Dettelbach or a Chipman or one of those guys, but at least those guys, you kind of know where they stand. As terrifying as they can be in that role, not terrifying personally, but terrifying in that role because you know where they stand, at least you know where they stand. You know what you're expecting from those guys. A guy like Cekada, you don't. Is it just whichever way the wind is blowing from whatever comes down from the White House, or are you actually going to not only reverse some of these Biden-era policies, which looks good on paper, but reverse some of the harder stuff? Bring some of the elimination of the NFA, restrictions from the Gun Control Act. Truly standing up for gun owners and their rights. Is it going to kind of be one of those things where you look like a friend to gun owners and maybe you reverse some of the stuff that Biden has done, which again, is easier to do on paper, but we're talking about going after some of these restrictions that have stopped gun owners for upwards of almost 100 years, going after that stuff. Do you have the balls to do that? What we do want, though, is while the ATF is still there, reverse all of the gun control and restrictions that have been burdened upon us by the actions of few. Can we get a guy like that, or is Cekada the guy like that? That's yet to be seen. That's my opinion. Let me know yours down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold 'em down.